Hello and welcome back to the Publisher Podcast from Media Voices. I'm Esther Thorpe and this is the latest in a series of sessions from our Publisher Summits, which were held in June. This episode features a fantastic session from the Publisher Newsletter Summit, where Reach plc's Audience and Content Director, Jenna Thompson, discussed why they look to Substack for new newsletter launches, and what they've learned over the past 2 years of free and paid newsletter experiments. I've written up the highlights from this episode in an article which will be live on Tuesday on voices.media, or straight into your inbox if you're a subscriber to our weekly newsletter. Before we get into it, huge thanks to the sponsors of the Publisher Newsletter Summit, Posendo and Sino. You can find out more about them and how they help publishers take their newsletters to the next level at publishersummits.com. Now, over the last 18 months, Reach have launched 13 paid newsletters and more recently 14 free newsletters on Substack. But this is not a simple newsletter migration. Reach are using the platform to expand and enhance their portfolio of over 450 newsletters, as well as take advantage of audience growth and revenue tools. Here's Jenna Thompson to tell us more.
So at Reach, we have a really large network of brands, regional, national, international, and we have a large portfolio of newsletters that are associated to those brands. So we've got around 450 newsletters that are connected to our different titles. We've also recently started with experimenting with off-platform newsletters. So I know we're going to talk about Substack a lot today, but it's not just Substack that we've looked at. We've also done some work on LinkedIn. So you've just heard from Rob, who runs Northern Agenda. He has an expanded offering, which is on LinkedIn, which is the Northern Agenda Extra. And we have taken some of our flagship newsletters from our biggest regional titles and hosted some of those on LinkedIn as well as our own platforms. When it comes to Substack, we have done 2 phases of Substack newsletters. So we started experimenting in that space about 3 years ago now with a series of paid for newsletters. And those are really about specific topics written by individual experts, journalists, and they offer something that you can't get anywhere else. And we've had a lot of success in that space. We've had some things that have been less successful in that space. You know, we've done a lot of experimenting around that. And then earlier on this year, we've also launched a new series on Substack, which are free newsletters, which are, most of them are called the Something Drop. Not all, but most of them are. So they're generally about different topics. And what they are is curated digests of content all around a particular topic that offer a variety of sources. They don't just link to Reach content. They are bringing together the best of stories about a particular topic, pulled together by either an expert in that space or someone who has a passion in that space. So those are the different things that we've been doing recently on Substack. And the drive behind that is really about reaching people who might not have a relationship with us already. So, I mean, Reach has a large reach. It's in the name, right? Last month, we reached 35 million people in the UK, and that number is growing. That is a lot of people, but it also means there's a lot of people out there who don't have a relationship with us as well. So it's about going into different spaces to try and to connect with new audiences. And we might be writing about a topic which actually a reader might not generally associate with a Reach brand, but this could be a way of connecting them with our journalists. We've got a network of amazing journalists and they're creating brilliant content. And this is a way of showcasing that to new audiences. I mean, it's a similar approach to what we do on social. I mean, earlier on this year, we passed 100 million followers on our social platforms. And that is us trying to be where the audience are and meet them where they are. We're all aware there's a growing community of newsletter readers on Substack. And, LinkedIn newsletters have exploded in recent years as well. So this is about us being in that space and showcasing our content and journalists in that space.
And so what was it about Substack? We could talk about the other platforms as well, but about Substack that made you think this is the right place for people to find us there, to discover Reach and its content on this particular platform?
Yeah, there's 2 things really. So the first part is what I've just spoken about, which is there is a growing community on Substack of people who are engaging with newsletters across a variety of different topics. So that was the main sort of driver. And the second is there's a lot of features and functionality in Substack which allow you to really build a community around a topic or a journalist. So a really good example of this is the Valiant newsletter, which is, we've got quite a lot of newsletters shortlisted at the awards tonight, so fingers crossed. The Valiant is up for several of those. That's written by Mike Bagley. He writes about Port Vale Football Club. And what he has really successfully done with that newsletter is build a really engaged community of Port Vale fans who are not just readers of his content that he is producing through that newsletter on Substack. It really feels like a shared endeavor. So Mike spends a lot of time looking at the comments that people are leaving on his content on Substack. And he really takes time and thinks about how to engage with those readers. So we've heard a lot today about, replying and the importance of that. It goes beyond replying, really, because, he might get comments from someone which says, great newsletter, Mike. Thanks for the insight on this. I've been wondering about this topic. When the next time you speak to the chairman, could you ask him about this? And Mike really thinks about how to take that feedback and to use that to build future editions and to shape the content that goes into those editions of that newsletter. And he completes that circle by, referring back to those things, saying, oh, this actually was inspired by this reader who asked this question, and this is how that's come about. So really, there's a lot of things there that can help us to build that community, the commenting feature, the notes feature. The recommendations network has been really useful for us as well. And also about just putting us in that space where people might not have that relationship with Reach, but can discover our journalists in that way.
So obviously you're building that community there. That's something that I know a lot of people are experimenting with. Sam Baker of The Shift does that. She said that it creates stickiness. It creates a lasting reason for people to come back. So I wondered, to what extent does that drive direct benefits back to Reach?
Yeah, sure. So some of the newsletters, as I've said, are paid for. So they are obviously generating revenue from those newsletters. Our biggest successes in that space have been where we have three things, really, I would say. Exclusive content that you can't access anywhere else. A personality or a voice or expertise that's behind that content. And, Mike's a good example of that, but so is Inside Welsh Rugby, for example. Also shortlisted this evening. I'll keep plugging these awards. And a shared passion, I think. So where we know there's a community out there who are passionate about a particular topic, I'd say those are the three sort of magic ingredients that have been most successful for those newsletters that are generating revenue. For our newer launches, we've very much focused on those being free. And that what we're focusing on there is really about reaching new audiences, building those relationships. They do link to Reach content. They also link to other sites' content as well, if we think that actually that's the best place to take a reader to. It's a very reader-centric approach. So there'll be some links that come back, some traffic that comes back to Reach sites through that. But it's also about building our brands, building our journalists as brands as well. So we see a real value in that too. As Rob's just talked about some of the revenue challenges that newsletters face. But actually, the Northern Agenda is a really valuable product for us to have as a business. It's really important, the work that Rob's doing in that space. There is no other coverage really of Northern politics in the way that Rob does it. So there is value beyond the pure revenue also.
And that all makes a lot of sense. I wondered, for people who are looking maybe to develop similar strategies, how then do you, because obviously the newsletter is in a lot of cases considered to be a finite product. It is, people like to read it in their own inbox. They don't necessarily like to go elsewhere. John O'Connell from The Knowledge said that they experimented with linking out and it wasn't what the audience wanted. How much did you have to experiment with that?
Our first launches were very much about keeping people in that space in the inbox and on Substack. Our newer launches, I mean, they are very, very new. We're talking, actually, I mean, we had 2 that launched today, for example. We've got some that are a couple of weeks old. And I think the oldest is maybe 2 months old. So we're very early on in that journey, and we're learning a lot as we go. I think what's really important there is we're demonstrating to the readers who are signing up for that actually we are providing all of the best information that there is to know about this topic. And so some people will move on to click through to other things, and some people won't, but they'll have still enjoyed that experience and valued that experience and have built that connection with us. And that's really important, as I said. We've got one that is about books, which is written by a group of 4 authors within Reach. They share it. And we don't have a huge amount of content of books on books on the Reach network. We have some, but they might also link to, the book talk video that's got everyone talking that week, or they might link to the bookseller about a new release. And what it is doing is providing a really well-rounded product for those subscribers. And the engagement that we've seen on these newsletters so far, although it's very early days, as I said, is really, really promising.
Nice, fantastic. Obviously, early days yet, but 2 years in, is there anything that you've learned that you would have liked to have implemented at the start in terms of strategy?
I think it goes back to those ingredients that I spoke about. For the ones that we launched earlier, as I said before, those are paid for newsletters. And I think over time, we have really been able to zero in on what makes a paid for newsletter on Substack successful. And that is the ththings that I spoke about before. So that exclusivity, and often that's not necessarily exclusive content as such. So it might not be an exclusive interview, but it could be exclusive insight. So, we've got one that's around Man United by Samuel Luckhurst, and it's not his reporting on the match, which you can find on the Manchester Evening News. It's his insight into actually what is going on behind the scenes at Man United right now, which is a rich seam to tap into. So it's giving them something completely different. It's the expertise that's coming from that author, or a passion from that author. They don't necessarily, need to be an expert, but they need to be passionate about that topic. And so I think we have over time tested ones that haven't worked out so well. I think we have really grasped now actually what makes those successful in that space, and we're very early into the process of understanding what does that look like for these digests. But we've got more coming all of the time, so that data and insight is we're getting more of that. Nice. Every day.
That sounds overwhelming. But operationally, then, how does it sit within the wider team, and to what extent are you sort of all feeding into one big pool of knowledge about what works for in general versus just on Substack or your own?
I think it's probably interesting here to talk about how our newer launches have developed, because they're quite different. So that's the digest that I spoke about. So we had the digest format in mind as something that we wanted to explore. I think everyone in this room will have probably seen the success that Michael McLeod's had with the Edinburgh Minute, and now the London Minute and the Arsenal Minute. We're really interested in that as a space. So here's a one-stop shop of everything about this topic. We've done the hard work for you by cutting through the noise and bringing it all into one place. How we actually started the project was a very open-ended approach to all journalists in Reach to just say, hey, have you ever wanted to be the editor of your own newsletter? And we opened that out to everybody. And the response to that was amazing, actually. We had so many great ideas coming forward from people who weren't involved in the work that we currently do on newsletters at all. And actually some people who weren't actually involved in digital at all either. We had quite a lot of people coming through from our print teams who just have a passion for something that they don't get to express in their role and wanted to build that into their role. So that was really exciting.
That's such a validation for the form as well, that they kind of go, what works in print, but actually this is a really good way to develop that relationship with audiences in another way.
Yeah, and it's a really great way for people to develop new skills and try new things. And I must say here, our editors have been really supportive of people in their teams doing that. They've really understood the value of that. And, part of that is because we made sure that actually the first step on that journey was speaking to all our editors about what we wanted to achieve and the process that we were going to go through. So we went through that pitching process. We spoke to those authors about their ideas and how they saw those fitting into that format that we wanted to take. And I think we have got a really good group of people who are involved in it. I think inviting people and then, working with them to build a format that we think would be successful in that space has got them really engaged in it from the beginning. One of the things that we've also tried hard to do is to make those authors who, as I say, might not actually be involved in newsletters in their day job at all, feel like they are part of a team. So the authors who are working on our new Substack launches, they're from all different parts of the business, all different parts of the country. But we've created a mini team with them, for example. So there is a weekly newsletter that goes to all of those authors, which just shouts out successes, talks about challenges, it sets some tasks for the week ahead. So I don't know, why don't you try this thing that's really worked to promote the newsletter on another one? And also to get them together regularly as a group to talk about what's going well for you, what's harder, so that they feel like they're part of a community of newsletter authors. And in terms of how that has reflected on our wider strategy as well. So as I said, we've got 450 newsletters, which are very much centered around our brands. We've got really strong network of brands from our national titles like the Mirror and the Express to our regional sites as well. So, Rob said we've got the MEN, the Liverpool Echo, the Birmingham Mail, Wales Online. A lot of our newsletters are around those brands. But we've also been looking more at the topic space for our sort of owned and operated newsletters. So one of our biggest newsletters, and we've heard it as a theme a lot today, is the Money Saving Club. And that is hugely popular. It's quite different to some of the money newsletters that we've heard about today, which focusing on, savings and pensions. We're very much focused on managing the cost of living crisis, how to deal with your energy bills, that kind of space. And we've recently launched more in that kind of area as well. So they're not actually tied to a brand. They are bringing together the best of Reach content from across the network. So one is the Health and Wellness Club. And another is the Savvy Buyers Club, which is a shopping guide. And what we've seen through those is we've really sort of tailored those around topics where we see a lot of audience. So we get a lot of audience from Google Discover. And we've really thought about the topics that are resonating on that platform and how we can have a strategy to convert some of those readers into newsletter audiences and develop those newsletters off the back of that. But I don't know if we would have understood the power of topics as much as we do if we hadn't have done so much experimenting in the topic space off platform.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I have a final question, but I'm happy to cede it to anybody who has any questions.
The one thing everyone says about Substack is its discoverability. Can you just talk us through how?
So how people are finding those newsletters on Substack. Okay, cool. So, one of the things that is really important for us is I've talked about Reach as a network. And so the power of the Reach network is really valuable to us to point people towards these new launches in the first place. So that's a big driver for us. We have found a lot of success with recommendations on Substack. And maybe that fly wasn't caught after all, just hit me in the head. So we have been sharing recommendations to our own Substack newsletters in other Substack newsletters where they felt relevant and right for the audience. And that's worked really well for us. We've also encouraged our authors to connect with other writers who are writing about similar topics or themes on Substack as well. And, do that sort of, I'll recommend yours if you recommend mine, and we'll share content from each other's newsletters when that's appropriate. But yeah, we've seen a lot of success from that. And I think, another part of that is some of the features on Substack, which are really useful is, the commenting, the note space. It just gives you a little bit more of an opportunity to raise the profile of that newsletter on Substack itself. So that's been really useful as well.
Can I ask you a sneaky question? I'm going to slightly abuse the privilege of the mic here. All those things you're describing to me, and I've wondered about this on Substack, it's kind of becoming a social network, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely, a lot of the steps that Substack has taken in the last months, year, are definitely taking it more into that space. And actually, some of that has been really valuable for us actually, because it's really helped to build that community. So we see, and we know from Substack that a lot of people receive the newsletters in their inboxes, but a lot of time people also spend time on the Substack app as well, where there are those features. So it's really important to us for our writers to get involved in those other functions that you can access on Substack to both promote the newsletter further, but also to engage with the audiences that they're building there as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jenna.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much to Jenna for joining us on stage at the summits. We've written up the key learnings from this session, which will be live on our website on Tuesday and in our newsletter. You can find both on voices.media. And finally, thanks once again to the Newsletter Summit sponsors, Percendo, who are the leading platform for email advertising, and Sino, a global leader in data solutions and market research. This is all from the Publisher Summits for now, as next week we'll be starting the next season of the Publisher podcast. We still have a lot of sessions to write up and release though, which we'll be saving until the new year and the run up to our next summits in the summer of 2026. Until next week, goodbye.